News alert, 4 hearings underway on Capitol Hill as Senate committees grill President-elect Trump's cabinet picks. They include Mr. Trump's choice to lead the EPA, Oklahoma Attorney General Scott Pruitt, as well as South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, nominated to be the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Secretary of Commerce pick billionaire investor Wilbur Ross, and Congressman Tom Price, Mr. Trump's choice for Secretary of Health and Human Services, under especially intense scrutiny as Republicans work to repeal Obamacare. We are monitoring all of these hearings and we'll bring you breaking news as it develops. Fox News alert. We are looking live at the White House, where President Obama expected to explain his controversial decision to shorten Chelsea Manning's jail sentence when he holds the final news conference of his presidency later today. The move to grant clemency triggering fierce reaction from many on Capitol Hill and in the Pentagon, who consider Manning a traitor. This is Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith here today. Harris Faulkner, Meghan McCain, co-host of After the Bell on Fox Business. Melissa Francis is here. And today's hashtag one lucky guy, New York Congressman Peter King, and he is outnumbered. Welcome back, sir. Good to have you.
Here, Sandra.
I saw you in the green room. You were watching those hearings intensely.
You know, I've served with Tom Price for a number of years. He's really a great guy. My wife is from Atlanta. Her sister's a doctor. She knows Dr. Price. And again, Tom and I, whether we agree on every issue or not, he's one of the most honest, honorable people I know. He knows healthcare inside out. He'll be an outstanding secretary.
Very good. All right. We've got a lot more to get to. Let's begin. As we await President Obama's final news conference as commander-in-chief, the firestorm over his decision to shorten the jail sentence for Chelsea Manning, the transgender Army private who leaked more than 700,000 U.S. documents to WikiLeaks and was given 35 years in federal prison. The reaction from lawmakers on both sides, swift and furious. The Republican Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, saying this is just outrageous. Chelsea Manning's treachery put American lives at risk and exposed some of our nation's most sensitive secrets. This from Senator John McCain. It is a grave mistake that I fear will encourage further acts of espionage and undermine military discipline. And from Senator Marco Rubio, it is shameful that President Obama is siding with lawmakers and the ACLU against the men and women who work every day to defend our nation. Some Democrats also blasting President Obama's decision.
I think it's dead wrong. Absolutely dead wrong. This is treason, espionage at the highest level. I'm, for one, not going to be supportive of these types of commutes whatsoever or pardons. I think they're wrong.
I have serious concerns about equivocating sentences when national security is at stake. What message do we send for the next person who thinks that they can get a treasure trove of documents, release them because something inspires them to do so?
And while the White House is defending the president on this, Fox News is learning that outgoing Defense Secretary Ash Carter, as well as top Army leaders, recommended against the president shortening Manning's sentence. And sources tell us defense officials blame Manning's actions for accelerating the Arab Spring and potentially contributing to the rise of ISIS. First off, Congressman, your thoughts on this act by President Obama?
This is absolutely shameful, indefensible, disgraceful. Manning cost lives in Afghanistan. He put American lives at risk, put the lives of our allies, our sources on the ground at risk. We've seen a number of reports that there were killings and murders of those who were found out because of what he leaked out. It's absolutely indefensible how the president could do this. And after denouncing WikiLeaks for the last 6 weeks, because what they allegedly did during the campaign, to be given, commuting the sentence of this person, to me 35 years is not even long enough. This is not, some symbolic thing. This was real lives were lost.
And tough to find a Democrat to defend this position. And you just heard there, Joe Manchin, critical of this.
Bob Menendez as well, who's an extremely liberal senator. Sometimes I'm glad breaking news like this happens when I'm home alone and not here at work, because I started screaming at my television yesterday afternoon when I was watching the news. To say this is shameful, I don't even think goes further enough. You are condoning people that commit treason. We put our intelligence officers, our troops, our diplomats' lives at risk. As we said, it accelerated the rise of Arab Spring and the rise of ISIS. I don't know where our president his head exactly is at. But you're sending the message to our troops, to the rest of Americans, to our allies overseas that treasonous acts are condoned as long as it's sort of politically expedient. I'm curious on how he's going to defend this today, and if he's going to maybe in the next 2 days condone Edward Snowden or Julian Assange. It's completely beyond my realm of understanding, and I think it's a huge slap in the face, completely disrespectful to all our troops who do so much to defend us overseas.
And not just defending the decision to shorten Manning's sentence, but also to go against the recommendations we're learning of military leaders.
Yeah, look, I think it's completely fair for those of us in the media and those lawmakers that you listed, both Democrat and Republican, to question this man's credibility when we are told by the White House that he has, quote, accepted responsibility and expressed remorse for her crimes. I think it's within bounds to say, well, how do we know?
Right.
Yeah. How do we know that? Like, what is the litmus test for expressing, you know, I express feverishly, I'm remorseful. I'm curious to know what that would look like, considering the types of crimes that they're talking about.
Yeah, and I don't know if even if she could properly express remorse for this. I mean, the lives were lost. This wasn't some accident. This wasn't like a leak that somebody makes by mistake, or they put something out, think it's not going to hurt. This had to hurt. This wasn't just PR. This was life and death. It did hurt.
And knowing the impact that it had, not just on us, but on the world, contributing to the rise of ISIS, it is suggested. What message does this send to the world, Melissa?
I mean, one of the messages it sends is about WikiLeaks. I mean, the administration has spent so much time railing against WikiLeaks and condemning, you know, what we saw during the election and saying Julian Assange was in essence responsible for getting Donald Trump elected. I mean, there's so many Democrats have come out saying basically that the leaks were the things that killed Hillary Clinton. Here you go, and you have someone who released all these documents to WikiLeaks. It's a really bizarre message right now. I can't wait to hear what the president has to say about it. I hope he does address it when he comes out later this afternoon, because I can't even imagine what he's going to say.
What does he say to the families of those people who were in harm's way because of what was released? And we know now the document dump was 3 times the size as what we originally thought it was at 250,000. Now it's closer to 700,000.
Also, when they talk about how Donald Trump has cut himself off the intelligence community, I would like to hear what the intelligence community feels about this. The men and women on the ground in Afghanistan, in Iraq, would try to build up sources and recruits, and they see this happening. It's just.
So what about what Melissa just said, though? I mean, do you see this as a win for WikiLeaks?
Yeah, it certainly takes away this whole anger that was coming from the administration toward WikiLeaks. I mean, WikiLeaks was the #1 villain in the world, and now suddenly they give, they're commuting the sentence of someone who dumped off all this information on Wiki. Absolutely, it's a totally inconsistent message.
So, what are the politics of this? I mean, why
it's so
do this?
confusing, though, because we don't know when intelligence breaches are now socially acceptable. Because right now the president is saying,
expedient for one side or the other.
Yes,
that's
politically expedient. That's why we should have just a rule and an understanding that all intelligence breaches are bad for American security. I am so fascinated to know what reasoning he's going to give, but there's a poetic irony to the end of this administration, whose policies for the past 8 years have made America completely less safe, led to the rise of ISIS, made globally democracy at large less safe, and now he's condoning the actions of individuals who let our national security secrets out to be exposed and also put America in danger.
So let's branch that out to the other commutations that we've seen. We just had this full screen up, if you could look at it again, Congressman, of the number that we have seen historically. Look at the number for President Obama, far exceeding anyone.
George H.W. is 3.
Right. All I would say is that the only possible defense, partial defense, is a lot of those with drug crimes. They feel that the feeling toward that has changed. Having said that, though, there was one terrible commutation. That was the person who was involved in the blowing up of Francis Tavern in the 1970s, was killed New Yorkers, killed Americans, involved in a number of other bombings. His sentence was also commuted yesterday, and that sort of has gone under because of all the went Manning. That's also a disgrace, especially for those of us in New York who knew some of the people who were killed.
Can a commutation be overturned?
No, the president has the power on this. As far as I know, the president
has absolute power. It's done.
On pardons, commutations,
You know, we talk about the rise of ISIS. I guess it might be helpful to know some specifics about how he might have led to that. She might have led to that.
Part of the problem in releasing that is by doing that, you're also showing what our sources were on the ground. I mean, that's where it's hard to publicly say all the damage was done. But having said that, having been on the Intelligence Committee then and now, and in fact, former Chairman Mike Rogers was on last night talking about the number of people that he knows who were
that
killed
were exposed
directly because, because again, they may have a vague reference in these papers, but the analysts from Al-Qaeda and ISIS and the Taliban, they go through that with a fine-tooth comb, and they can figure out who it was in that village or who was in that hamlet who was cooperating with us.
You mentioned the word analysts, and all I can think about are all those that we had in our own government, those intel analysts who were ignored by this administration.
Right.
Do you know what I was thinking about? What about General Petraeus? He can't pardon or commutate whatever his punishment. I mean, you're going to be okay with what Chelsea Manning did and condone those actions, and a mistake from a genius who helped lead the surge and is an icon of our U.S. military. His punishment is fine. So that's the message we're sending.
How is it politically expedient?
Very true.
Politics?
Congressman, I wonder what you think of this in general, the idea of a president pardoning or commuting sentences on the way out the door. I mean, obviously, this is a tradition that has been alive in our country for a long time. It always causes a big controversy. What do you think of it in general?
Yeah, well, not always. It didn't under either the President Bushes, really. Certainly not under George W. Bush. When Bill Clinton went out, he did pardon a number of terrorists here in the country. To me, it's a power the president has. You don't want to take it away from him. But again, part of the responsibility of being president is to uphold the dignity of the office. And this just looks like a final left-wing shot as he's going out the door, showing where he really stands all along.
Yeah.
And you make a point. We may never know all of what they looked at because that would put too much information in the public sphere.
All right. Well, the number of House Democrats skipping Donald Trump's inauguration growing to around 1/3 of the party's caucus, as Minority Leader Chuck Schumer appears to give his blessing to senators who may want to skip too. Is this okay or an insult to the American people? Plus, Mr. Trump's nominee for Health and Human Services Secretary on the hot seat on Capitol Hill today. One big topic, Obamacare repeal efforts. We'll have some of the fiery exchanges coming up. And after the show, you can join our live chat by clicking the Overtime tab at foxnews.com/outnumbered or go to facebook.com/outnumberedfnc. And of course, you can tweet us during the show. We're all on our phones. We're looking.
I'm tweeting right now.
And we'll see you after the show as well.
We come back with a Fox News alert. Former President George H.W. Bush is in a hospital in Houston, Texas, and here is the latest. His spokesperson says the former president, who is 92 years old, was taken to Houston Methodist on Saturday for shortness of breath, and that he has responded very well to treatments. He also says they hope to have Mr. Bush home soon. We are keeping an eye on this for you, and we'll update you on the former president's condition as we learn more.
Only 48 hours to go until the inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump. And at last check, 64 House Democrats, about 1/3 of their caucus, are skipping the ceremony. This as Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer appears to be giving his blessing to fellow senators to stay home too.
I respect where they're coming from. There have been so many irregularities in this, most of all Russian interference. So I respect where they're coming from. I mean, I think each person has to make his or her choice on his own, but I don't begrudge those who have said they're going to boycott.
Would you urge Senate Democrats to attend?
Let each person make his or her own decision.
Meantime, President-elect Donald Trump tells Ainsley Earhart he needs extra seats at the ceremony anyway.
As far as other people not going, that's okay, because we need seats so badly. I hope they give me their tickets. Are they going to give us their tickets, or are they going to give them to other people? No, what happens to their tickets? I hope they're going to give us their tickets.
Okay. You think he knows what's going to happen to the tickets, wouldn't you?
You think they're going to give the tickets?
Are congressional tickets transferable? Aren't they like tickets to the AMC Theater?
No, just members of Congress. They're not transferable.
Okay.
I think this is all disgraceful. It's totally wrong. Not to trivialize it, I compare it to like the Southern secessionists who didn't acknowledge Abraham Lincoln as the president. Whether you agree or disagree, no matter how you feel about the president, this is not a Republican or a Democratic inauguration. It's a celebration of democracy. And they can start fighting on January 21st. They can do whatever they want. But, you know, democracy really, it's a fairly weak fabric. I mean, we can't be testing it all the time. And to me, if we don't come together, at least on Inauguration Day, you really are straining the fabric of the country. I think it's wrong. It's indefensible. And I don't know if one Republican, maybe I missed it, I never heard one Republican say, after you defeated your father in 2008 or Mitt Romney in 2012, not one Republican said he was going to boycott the, now I don't know, maybe some didn't show up and not one person suggested a boycott. You just don't do it. It's really, to me, this really is it's a low standard in American history, what's being done now.
I was explaining it to my kids kids over the weekend because I have a 4th grade son who's really interested in history and studying wars, you know, that where the transfer of power left blood on the ground, you know, and saying this is what makes our country special, is that when there is transfer of power from one group to another who strongly disagree over things and even disagree about how it happened, we have this peaceful transition and we go out and we respect it. And that's why it's important. And it's like when you lose a game and you stand there and you walk across to the other side and you congratulate the other side and you stand there and watch them accept their award. At the same time, you know, I think that a lot of these politicians are looking ahead to re-election and they're, you know, kowtowing to their constituents who are really angry and feel like, you know, the wrong person was elected. So that's really what it's all about. I wish it were about heart. I think it's more about
re-election. It's odd they think that this behavior would actually attract an electorate. Like, how would that exactly work? And there have been some Republicans who have missed inaugurations for different reasons through the years. But what you're talking about is this growing list of people who are literally boycotting this like they're selling something in Washington that they don't want to buy.
There's more than one or two. I mean, I never heard anybody talk about it. I remember when Barack Obama came in 2009, as much as we disagree with him on policy, I didn't hear anyone say anything bad about him, threaten not to have the inauguration. He was the president of the United States. Listen, Al Gore had much more of a claim, if you wanted to say it was illegitimate, back in 2000. Richard Nixon in 1960. There's absolutely no evidence at all that Donald Trump is not the totally legitimate president of the United States. And to be even challenging that is really dangerous. It's a dangerous path to go down.
Do you think this is a preview of more divisiveness? I mean, we have seen so much of that in the past several years. Is it going to get worse? And what is this telling us?
I think it has to get worse. I mean, to me, this is really from day one declaring war on Donald Trump and on the Trump administration and on the person who was legitimately elected by the people of the United States. It's just it's a terribly, terribly dangerous path they're going down.
Well, to the president-elect's point, though, you know, it would be interesting if these congressional members had to bring their tickets to the to the person and say, look, these are my tickets. This is why I'm not coming. I mean, it seems like there are some who are sitting on the sidelines. We know that Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts has kind of been, you know, well,
she said she's going.
She was vacillating for a bit. So I get the feeling, and I don't know what prompted her final decision, that there's some like political, what's going on in the background?
I think, again, if you look at the people of Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, that's where the election was decided the last time, Middle America, they don't support this. I think they're appealing, especially in the House, to their narrow bases. These are, for the most part, very Democratic districts. And in the end, you have Democrats focusing on small interests rather than national interests, and that's why they lost the election.
Well, so there's other reasons why some Democrats are choosing to be there to make a point. Sherrod Brown says, it was on a conference call where Elizabeth Warren said, I will be there as well. It was a conference call for Trump to dismantle the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. On that call, Sherrod Brown said, I want to be there. I want my presence to remind Trump and other Republicans of the fights ahead on banking, civil rights, and other issues on which there is a deep divide with Democrats.
That's actually a very legitimate position to take. Say, listen, we're going to be disagreeing on many, many issues. I'm going to be part of the process. I'm going to be there. I'm not cutting you out. You're not cutting me out. So listen, I disagree with Sherrod on a lot of issues. He's a really good guy. But by being there, to me, that is democracy. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying people should love Donald Trump on January 20th and say we all agree. No, they're going to have strong disagreements. The country is divided, but we're going to be part of the process. We're going to be part of the democratic structure. We're not going to sit out in the sidelines.
Yeah. One of the things you were alluding to, there's something going on in Gambia, a country right now where they're trying to have their transition. The person who was just elected is out of the country for his own protection, and they're at war. I mean, you talk about the thinness, that very thin thread of democracy around the world. We've got to respect that.
Yeah, I mean, throughout the history of the world.
Not to compare us to that country.
I understand. No, but throughout the history of the world, the regular form has been to have bloody revolutions. That's how.
Absolutely.
So, you know, you don't want to start this. And again, we're going to have a commander-in-chief who may have to send troops into battle. Yep. He may have to take very significant domestic decisions regarding banking or whatever. And to not have total legitimacy is going to undercut that. I mean, how many people can say, I'm not sending my son or daughter into battle because this is not a legitimate president?
Petrifying that that's a scenario.
And you above all can appreciate that,
Yes, thank you. All right, we will keep at this. And in these final days leading up to the inauguration, keep it right here, of course. And on Friday, you don't want to miss a single minute. Fox News Channel will bring you this historic day like no one else can. The fate of Obamacare is looming large now on Capitol Hill as lawmakers grill Mr. Trump's nominee for Health and Human Services Secretary. This, as a new report, is raising some big concerns about repealing the health care law. We debate it. Plus, Russian President Vladimir Putin accusing the Obama administration of trying to undermine President-elect Donald Trump. Congressman King reacts to that.
Just days ago, President-elect Trump said his plan would provide insurance for everybody. Do you share those goals?
I think it's absolutely imperative that we have a system in place that has patients at the center and allows for every single American to have the opportunity to gain access to the kind of coverage that they want.
You share his goal of insurance for everybody?
That's been always my stated goal. It's what we've worked on and throughout my entire public career.
That was Health and Human Services Secretary nominee Tom Price getting grilled on Capitol Hill as the confirmation hearing for the Georgia congressman continues right now. Price is facing pointed questions about President-elect Donald Trump's plans to replace the health care law. This as a new Congressional Budget Office report finds that repealing Obamacare could cost at least 18 million Americans to lose their insurance right off the bat, and about 32 million to lose it within a decade. It also estimates premiums for some people could double within a decade, but Republicans are blasting that report, saying it assumes no Obamacare replacement that reduces costs, which they are vowing to put forth. Let's start, Congressman, if you will. Do you feel like you know enough about what is going to become the replacement as we face next week? This is one of the early things that the president-elect says he will get done.
Well, first of all, he's not going to be able to replace Obamacare next week. He's going to issue executive orders hitting certain parts of Obamacare. Now, I think we have to be careful. Listen, Obamacare has failed. Premiums are too high. Deductibles are too high. And it does not provide a good level of care. Having said that, it's such a complicated bill. For instance, in New York alone, 800,000 people are now on Medicaid. So what happens to those 800,000 people? Where do they go? And who's going to pick up the tab for that?
Do you know the answer?
No, and that has not been decided yet. I mean, that's all this is going to be part of a process. We're meeting in Philadelphia next week. There's going to be a 3-day conference the Republicans have. President Trump is going to be there. Vice President Pence is going to be there. And no, but all of this has to be addressed. So I'm saying we have to do it. We have to do it in a way that no one is off the rolls. No one is losing the care they have now. And that's going to be difficult. It's going to be a difficult transition. It can't be done overnight. It has to be done, but it can't be done overnight.
So, Melissa, what do you make of the idea that President-elect says everybody's going to have coverage? He's doubled down on that in just the last couple of days. What could that financially look like, knowing how much Obamacare has already cost us?
I mean, it's very hard to say. It has to be the case, of course, because I'm not even sure it's legal that you can give people a benefit and then take it away later. I heard Judge Napolitano trying to break that down. There's a lot that's complicated. There are some pieces that look easy. I mean, we all know a lot of people that would like to have only catastrophic care, whether it's families or it's young people.
Especially.
I mean, there are so many people who have had very high premiums that cover nothing. I mean, there are people I've talked to who had no insurance and were in tears when Obamacare went through. Then they found out the policy they bought that was expensive. No doctor they knew took it. My question for you, though, is can you pull the pieces apart? I mean, you talk about the people that are on expanded Medicare, Medicaid. Can you take that? Can you separate it and kind of try and attack the pieces individually?
I think we have to do it surgically. We have to do it, but realize that this doesn't lend itself to sound bites. It can't be done overnight. And also, I mean, Donald Trump really says two things. One, he says, if this fails, it's our fault. Just looking at it politically. On the other hand, we have to get it done, but we shouldn't be promising people it's going to be done overnight. This is going to be, again, California, Ohio, Indiana, New York, they all really went into the Medicaid expansion. Other states didn't. So New York is not going to be the same as Mississippi, and Ohio's not going to be the same as Missouri. I mean, and we have to take that into account. You're talking millions of people here.
Okay, so talk about the timing, because that seems to be the issue. There are promises that this will be done overnight or should be done overnight. What is an acceptable time frame, and what are you looking at?
I want to say, first of all, we should have a plan soon, but it should be implemented over a period of time. I keep going back to this one example. I'm sure there's hundreds of these around the country. What do you do with 800,000 people who are now on Medicaid in New York that weren't before? That's a big number. And if that's just suddenly pulled, then also you have the hospitals. The hospitals have reacted to Obamacare. They're going to have to adjust to whatever the new plan is. So it has to be done, but incrementally and however long it takes. So long as we have a plan out there early enough so people know what's in the forecast, and also so insurance companies don't start bailing out. We have to have something to transition people who are on the insurance policies now.
That's an important point. You and I were talking in the break, and just to widen it out, Megan, you know, the IRS was tasked with running the financial end, the revenue end of this. I have never seen anybody take anything out of the hands of the IRS, so I'm curious to know how this will look.
Listen, anything has got to be better than in my home state of Arizona, where premiums are up 150%, with all Arizonans only having the option of one healthcare provider, one in all counties except one in the entire state of Arizona. anything has to be better than that. And I know a lot of people in my life that have been hit really hard by this. Obamacare was a disaster since its inception. Right. Anything is better than this.
Well, because it was so bad, that's what's going to make it difficult. We got to do it. I agree with you totally. Absolutely, we have to do it.
All right, we'll keep on this. But for the first time, Russian President Vladimir Putin is directly denying claims made in an unverified dossier on President-elect Trump. Putin is calling it total nonsense and insisting that Moscow does not have any compromising information on the president-elect. Instead, Putin says the allegations are part of the Obama administration's attempt to undermine the legitimacy of Mr. Trump's presidency. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest firing back.
First of all, it sounds like he got his copy of the talking points. Second,
from who?
Well, I don't know. It certainly sounds a lot like what the incoming administration's team is saying. But it is not the first time that the Russian president has called into question the veracity of the United States government.
Congressman, there's no evidence anywhere that anything in the dossier had any shred of truth to it. That being said, I am not going to care ever about anything Vladimir Putin has to say about the United States. I think he's a murderous KGB dictator and a butcher, and I'm not really exactly sure why he is choosing to voice his opinion at this moment. I
agree with you completely. I think there's absolutely nothing to that dossier. It was a disgrace that the intelligence community presented those 2 pages to Donald Trump. That gave the media the excuse. Once that was leaked out, that gave the excuse to go to the full 35 pages. That's where the leak was. Whoever, and it had to be either somebody in the intelligence community or the Trump campaign. It wasn't the Trump campaign, but somebody leaked out those 2 pages, the existence of the 2 pages, which gave the media the excuse to go with the 35-page slander and smear. Now, as far as Putin, we shouldn't listen to anything he says. I think the Republicans make a mistake. If they want to start quoting Putin, we're falling right into the hands of him and our enemies and our adversaries.
Okay, but why is he weighing in?
Because he's enjoying the publicity. I think the main purpose, when this first started, the hacking 2 years ago, when he first started, was to undermine faith in the American electoral system. And he has now become a player. He's out there. We're looking to him for his opinion of what happened in the American campaign. Forget Putin. I agree with you. He's a murderer. He's a dictator. He's a horrible person. And we should not be relying on him in any way. Listen, I can see possible avenues of negotiation, but that's like, again, Reagan negotiating with the Soviets. Trust but verify, and right now there's nothing to trust in Putin.
Congressman, how do we take the air out of the balloon in terms of how much they say that they had to do or didn't do with our election? I mean, how do we take that away from some who would use it as a talking point, anti-legitimacy for Donald Trump? I mean, and also deal with the fact that we were hacked. Like, what is the middle ground here?
First of all, I think we should say we were hacked, and we have to take action.
We were hacked.
I believe we were, yeah. Now, as far as the influence it had in the election, I blame the intelligence community for this. They were saying all along there was no way of gauging what impact it had. Then, the day after they told us that, the next day it's leaked to the Washington Post that the Russians did favor Trump. They may have, may not. I'm willing to accept they did. But to leak it in that way made it sound so evil, as if there was some plot going on. And that really is what caused the if they come out and said, listen, we've looked at it and we think that on balance they preferred Donald Trump for whatever reason, that's a legitimate conclusion. But to leak it out the way they did, as if there was something clandestine going on here. And then also with the 2 pages, if they're going to give them the 2 pages, and then somebody had to leak to the media that those 2 pages were given, that then justified in some media eyes the excuse to go with the whole 35
Well, and
pages.
calling it a dossier, because you were pointing out in the how Kellyanne Conway, the incoming White House counselor to Mr. Trump, was saying, why do you call it a dossier? A dossier gives it credibility.
Right.
Yeah. It also, I mean, it's dangerous for the Trump camp especially to conflate these 2 points, to try and minimize the idea that we were hacked because others are using it to delegitimize his election. It doesn't delegitimize his election. At the same time, we were hacked. And this is very important. It's something to focus on. It happens all the time, and it's a matter of national security. And now you see people that are skipping the inauguration, saying they're not coming because, Russia was involved in the election. It's made it so much bigger. We have to acknowledge
hopefully it doesn't absolve our intel community and the rest of our government from getting to the bottom of what happened.
No, and 99.9% of the intel community does an outstanding job. We should find out exactly what the Russians did. The hacking was terrible. But this whole idea of who they supported, does anyone really think that they supported John McCain over Obama in 2008 or Mitt Romney over Obama in 2012? No, and countries always lean. Listen, look how President Obama got involved in the Israeli election.
Yeah,
I mean, that goes on all the time. But the extent of hacking and the illegality, and it's all part of Russian aggression, which has to be stopped.
All right. Makes my head explode talking about Putin. All right, Fox News is learning
all morning.
all morning is learning 4 more Gitmo detainees are being transferred this week. Sorry, Congressman. As the White House admits President Obama will not succeed in his goal of closing the prison down, whether that's a blot on Mr. Obama's legacy and what President-elect Donald Trump should do about Gitmo.
Hump Day Sizzle, let's get to it. The White House is now admitting it will not be able to close Guantanamo Bay before President Obama leaves office. But it seems he is trying to transfer out as many detainees as possible. 4 more will leave later this week on the heels of 10 others who were sent to Oman a few days ago. That will bring the total number of prisoners left at the facility to 41. Here's White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest on his boss's failure to deliver on one of his biggest campaign promises.
At this point, I don't anticipate that we will succeed in that goal of closing the prison, but it's not for a lack of trying, that I assure you. And the only reason it didn't happen is because of the politics that members of Congress in both parties, frankly, played with this issue.
Really? Is that the only reason? Because there are 41 people left there, and I thought, Congressman, they were reportedly the worst of the worst. Maybe there are 41 reasons.
They are the worst of the worst, and President Obama has been consumed by this since the day he came to office. And to me, it's the apology tour into the Middle East. It's Chelsea Manning as he's going out the door, getting every possible prisoner he can out of Guantanamo. And I've been to Guantanamo. And listen, you can make criticism this or that. The fact is, it's better than any basic training facility in the country. It's better than almost any prison in the country. The prisoners there, they're playing soccer. They get art lessons, language lessons. They have 3 meals a day. They have medical care. This is unlike any other prison. And somehow when the president talks about it like it's some sort of concentration camp, he's really diminishing our status in the world. And if they talk about encouraging terrorists, the way he describes Guantanamo encourages terrorism.
Congressman, is it needed as much as it was needed years ago?
It could well be needed, because I think we have stopped taking prisoners over the last 4 years. Because, again, somehow it's wrong to keep somebody in Guantanamo, but it's okay to blow them apart with a drone. And so we take very few prisoners. There's very little interrogation going on. So I think it is a facility, and again, it's monitored. There's the Red Cross. They get, to me,
gyms.
It's better than, again, any Army basic training.
All right, so Donald Trump's already told us his plans. He's going to end any detainee transfers once he's in office. What will he do with those who are left?
I guess we'll keep them there. I mean, I don't know where you can put them. I don't want them in the United States. I don't want them back here. And if you send them overseas, so many of them do go back to the battlefield. Enough of them go back to the battlefield. They're hardened, they're trained, and that's going to cost American lives overseas. So to me, listen, of the 45, maybe a few, you could find some reason to let them out. But again, you have some very bad people there, and that's the reality.
Yeah. Megyn, your father, obviously Senator John McCain, saw battlefield time. I'm curious to know your thoughts on this.
I mean, listen, it's like President Obama has some checklist he's going through. How can I make America as vulnerable and least safe internationally as possible? And he's doing it in the last 3 days. This blows my mind. You're being very nice about Gitmo. It is a country club compared to most prisons here in the United States. If we allow these people here, they get Miranda rights. And I'm sorry if I don't think ISIS terrorist maniacs that are trying to destroy my way of life shouldn't have the same rights as Americans. I don't understand how he doesn't understand that these people, as both of you have said, are the most dangerous, the worst of the worst. They're going to have more motivations to go out, to come back and hurt Americans. I hope under President Trump that we start capturing these people again. These are people that are trying to end my way of life. And sorry, I guess
and that would certainly, if that happens, would put those Islamic State savages right back into, a situation where they're contained. Because we know that they are contained sometimes on the battlefield. In Iraq, we've had people in custody on the ground, so on and so forth. But NIMBY, not in my backyard. That was the battle cry from places like Kansas and their lawmakers, as the congressman was alluding to. So what are your options without Gitmo?
No, I think they have to stay there, and I'm surprised that he didn't close it. I mean, it was so high on his list. He talked about it so much. I'm shocked that there are still people there that he didn't release. I'm grateful for that, at least. These are the most dangerous. And there are people, once they go back out onto the battlefield, I mean, they wear that badge that they were in Gitmo, and now they're free. It makes them that much more powerful.
Yeah, he couldn't, because there were countries, I mean,
they won't take them,
who wants to take these people?
Yeah.
Nobody wants them.
Well, there's a price.
Because he continues.
There's always a price.
But his foreign policy continues to only be something that works in a political science classroom, not in reality.
It's interesting. He tried to executive order this. He's tried everything.
3 more days, 2 more days.
All right, we'll move on.
Another New York Times columnist raising eyebrows over his latest op-ed. David Brooks vowing not to cover President-elect Trump's tweets. Writing, quote, his tweets are classic fool behavior. They are raw, ridiculous, and frequently self-destructive. That said, the sad part is that so many people treat Trump's tweets as if they are arguments when in fact they are carnival. I'm going to try to respond only to what he does, not what he says or tweets. I really wish some of my media confreres would do the same. Meantime, the president-elect saying in an interview he actually dislikes tweeting, but uses it as a defense against the media. Watch this.
I don't like tweeting. I have other things I could be doing. But I get very dishonest media, very dishonest press. And it's my only way that I can counteract. Like, for instance, when John Lewis said, you know, he's never done it before where he skipped an inauguration. Well, he has. It turned out to be a lie, so I'm able to say that. Now, if the press were honest, which it's not, I would absolutely not use Twitter. I wouldn't have to.
All right. Well, that column by David Brooks, by the way, just days it came after Times columnist Paul Krugman wrote that it's an act of patriotism to call Mr. Trump an illegitimate president. All right. First of all, the tweeting. wait a second. He doesn't like it?
First of all, that is a modern means of communication, and you can ignore part of what he says.
So should a journalist not cover it?
Of course they should. No, yeah, they should definitely cover it. And if they want to criticize it, that's their right. But that is a means of communication. Just like radio used to be, television, now it's
I don't know. It would appear to me that's a journalist saying he's not going to do his job.
Right.
So.
To me, I mean, I don't see how you can just walk away from that.
Yeah, it is direct statements coming from the person who is going to be president of the United States. You can't ignore it. At the same time, I do like the idea that he's going to cover or focus on what he does, not what he says, because actions do speak louder than words. And maybe if you had one reporter that committed themselves to not talking about the talk and only talking about the action, I mean, that's an interesting little niche. If you labeled yourself as that reporter, you could have a pretty strong following there. I think it's funny that Krugman's saying that he's not a legitimate president. I mean, or that it's patriotic to, you know, not recognize him as a legitimate president. Remember, Paul Krugman, who has a Nobel Prize for economics, predicted that the stock market would crash if President Trump was elected, and sure enough, he was elected, and it's up 9%. So Krugman has a lot of credibility.
But if you don't cover his tweets, you're going to probably miss a large part of the story as Donald Trump as president, because he says he will continue this tweeting.
Yeah, listen, the New York Slimes, as I call it, has a huge problem with conservatives and Republicans trusting their judgment on anything, because they got this election not only wrong, but so wrong that it will be taught in journalism classes. If they don't start getting some people working at the New York Times that sees the middle of the country, that understands why and how people supported President Trump, I don't know where they go from here. They need to start calling themselves commentators and not journalists. And David Brooks, I'm so sad to see sort of the breakdown of David Brooks over the last 4 years, 8 years. He used to be a good guy. He used to be an interesting columnist. And now you can't refuse. And I actually disagree with you. What a president says in any context is news. And you have to report on it.
And the tweet is more authentic than a press release that's written by 20 people. That is the president. That's his real thoughts. To me, a reporter should love that.
Well, and he's established that is really what he thinks and what he's doing, and it's established already. So that's like saying I'm not coming to your next news conference. I mean, it is established communication. So why don't we ever mention the fact that Mr. Obama has a Twitter account? We know when he signs it B.O. that it's coming from him. I wonder whether if he didn't get, and I don't think we can go for a day without saying sloppy kiss from some media members, if he didn't feel like he could get his messaging out via Ben Rhodes and others who say that they have friendly people that they can get stories out to, if he wouldn't take to
And by the way, the Obama
media.
White House launched hashtag campaigns, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So they use it when it's expedient for them.
And it's this attitude that elected Donald Trump. Because, again, the rest of the country sees the New York Times, or the slimes, as you call it, which I agree with you on totally, and they see that, this is what he's up against. So to me, in the long run, this just strengthens Trump.
And saying that, is it just kind of the statistics that we see, the research, or do you also feel that as a Republican you don't get a fair shake in the media?
Oh, I don't think we do at all. But again, to me, you can't complain because going into it, you know it. You have to factor that in. Whatever you do. Yeah.
But to go back to that interview with Ainsley this morning with Donald Trump, for Donald Trump to say he doesn't like tweeting, I don't know. I guess we all have
unbelievable.
Our perspective was that he enjoys it very much because he does it so often.
Yeah, I think he's protesting too much there. I think he likes it.
He loves it. He loves it. Okay. You can tell.
And we love reading them. All right, that's it for now. More Outnumbered in just a moment. All right, get ready for a special edition of Outnumbered on Inauguration Day. We will be streaming live on the web with no commercials and no rules. Trust us, you do not want to miss this. That will be happening this Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern on foxnews.com. Log on now. Just keep it open on your computer. Why not?
I think they have. The live chat is on fire.
Special thank you to Congressman Peter King. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Good to see you on a very important
day. You're going to stay with us
day and week.
Outnumbered Overtime.
How could I pull myself away?
Oh, yes. We love that about you.
There you have it. Send in your questions. We're going to keep it right here for Outnumbered Overtime on the web. You can find us also on Facebook at facebook.com/outnumberedfnc. We are back on TV tomorrow at noon Eastern. Happening Now starts right now.
Thank you.